Hi everyone, and welcome along. Today we're going to talk about a group that is certainly getting a lot of attention lately, Generation Z. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Phelim, and I'm the Senior Trends Manager at Global Web Index. And I'm joined today by my colleagues Olivia and Chase.
Hey everybody, I'm Chase, the Senior Trends Analyst here at Global Web Index.
And I'm Olivia, an Insights Analyst here at GWI. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to be talking to you about this new buzzworthy audience that you're probably hearing more and more about. As these internet users are beginning to gain presence and purchasing more online, they're starting to attract the type of attention that has long been bestowed on the millennial generation that came just before them. But while we have years of research on millennials to inform us about them, there are still many assumptions and cliches made about Generation Z that we hope to challenge today.
So let's jump straight into this. For today, when we talk about Generation Z, we're talking about internet users aged 16 to 20. So that's the adult section of this generation. And like Olivia said, there's been much research done on the attitudes and behaviors of millennials. So let's start by looking at some areas where Gen Zers differ from these slightly older consumers. Looking at their personal interests throws up some stark differences. We see pretty clearly how their life stage impacts their interests, for example. While millennials are much more likely to be interested in their personal finances and healthcare, Gen Zers are much more likely to be interested in entertainment. But there isn't quite a clear-cut divide here. Both groups are equally as interested in travel, and it's actually millennials that are more interested in TV. Where there is one stark difference is Gen Z's interest in gaming. They are significantly more interested in gaming, and this is a trend that holds true across all of our markets. That also means that gaming is challenging film as a key interest of Generation Z. So I'm just going to dip into a few areas where the attitudinal and lifestyle differences between these two generations sort of stood out to me. One is their view on the future. Now, Gen Z are less likely than millennials to feel positive about the future of the world economy and the environment. Now, this isn't true in every one of our markets, but it is true in most. Also, that this younger group are actually less likely to say they desperately want new tech speaks to how this new tech is perhaps a given for this group rather than an exciting new frontier. So let's take another quick jump and look at these groups' relationship with exercise and alcohol.
Well, a lot's been written lately about how younger consumers are less likely to be consuming alcohol.
Yeah, and that's borne out in our data too. While Gen Zers are just as likely to be exercising as millennials, in some form or another, the Gen Zers who are over the legal age are actually significantly behind for drinking alcohol. Now, of course, the data that I'm talking about here is self-reported, people telling us they drink alcohol regularly. But even taking this into account, the difference between these two audiences is still pretty apparent. And this holds true across all of our markets, from Japan and Vietnam to Italy and Ireland. Well, with one exception, that's Austria. But it's also true across all the types of alcohol that we track, including beer, wine, and various different kinds of spirits. Finally, let's look at the expressed attitudes of these groups. Now, Global Web Index asked respondents about their feeling towards 60 different attitudinal statements. And where these groups differ most is pretty telling. And at first glance, it's also not great news for brands. Now, the biggest difference here is that Gen Zers are much less likely to say they're proactive about investing their money. Now, that's pretty understandable given their life stage. And as we saw earlier, they're also less likely to be interested in their personal finances. But the other key differences here show that marketers may need to rethink their strategies when they're trying to engage with this group. Gen Zers are less likely to say they're brand conscious, to feel that they're influenced by advertising, and to think that they're brand advocates. Now, Chase, you've been looking into this brand-consumer relationship in a lot more detail.
Yep, And it's in their relationships and interactions with brands where we really see the standout characteristics of Gen Zers. Something which really struck me in the data is that when we do try to analyze what Gen Zers want from brands and what they expect from them, we have to really rethink the traditional brand-consumer relationship. Yes, they're less likely to say that they're brand conscious, that they are influenced by advertising, and to think that they are brand advocates, but that's not to say that brands have no place in their lives. It's actually quite the opposite. For this generation, brands have a role to play in nearly every part of their online lives. That includes the more conventional idea of brands providing things like quality products and loyalty programs. But more importantly, it also includes brands helping to define their lifestyles and, of course, being a source of entertainment. And this leads me to two central aspects which will be key themes throughout my discussion: influencer marketing and branded entertainment. These are two concepts which overlap quite a bit, but are proving extremely effective at establishing a connection with the interests and attitudes of this new generation on the block. Now, both types of these marketing, if done successfully, can fuse well with the Gen Z mindset when it comes to their relationships with brands. And that's because while traditional marketing does still have an impact, what we really see is that brands need to also take new approaches to think outside of the box to really hit the nail on the head when marketing to Gen Zers.
Yeah, because it's pretty clear that this is, one of the most digitally savvy generations. I mean, they came of age during the smartphone boom, and we see that they continue to be at the forefront of the mobile first trend.
And that has quite a serious impact on how you should market to them. Something which really demonstrates this is their uptake of online privacy tools which allow them to obstruct traditional marketing efforts online. While not quite as enthusiastic about online privacy tools as the millennial counterparts, it's still more than 4 in 10 Gen Zers using ad blockers each month, with a similar number deleting cookies. So they're clearly willing to resist advertising which doesn't meet their expectations. And if we stop to look at why Gen Zers are choosing to use ad blockers, we start to get an idea of what these expectations might be. It is helpful here to compare their ad blocking motivations against millennials. Overall, both audiences are most likely to be ad blocking as a result of ad fatigue. But what we also see is that while the millennial audience are much more likely to be ad blocking to be out of genuine privacy concerns compared to Gen Zers, the Gen Zers display a more pronounced distaste for ads which can compromise their online experience. And although the differences between generations here might be fairly slight, what they do point out is that in the broader picture of things, Gen Zers value the experience that successful marketing can offer them.
Yeah, and I think we seem to be seeing a lot more of that kind of experience marketing around us at the moment. And I suppose in some cases, the line between branded marketing and entertainment is increasingly becoming blurred.
Absolutely. Whether that's through longer form videos, powerful storytelling campaigns, or tech-driven experiences like AR or VR, in most cases, experience marketing gives consumers something to associate themselves with. When we ask Gen Zers what kind of things they want from their favorite brands to do or to provide, it's for the chance to associate themselves with the brands where they really stand above other generations. Some of the most striking examples of this are for wanting the brand to make them feel cool or trendy, for it to improve their image or reputation, or through it connecting them with other fans of the brand. For other generations, and that's millennials included, brands form a much more functional purpose, where the expectations from brands revolve more around things like keeping them up to date with new product news or helping them to simplify their daily lives. So I guess what we're really seeing is Gen Zers is a much more emotionally driven connection to the brands which might deliver the right messages. One of the most effective ways of giving this generation the opportunity to connect with the brand on an emotional level is through providing them with entertainment. Gen Zers are much more likely than all other generations to want brands to provide them with entertainment content. And this really makes its mark when we look at how this audience chooses to interact with brands. A quarter of Gen Zers are watching branded videos each month, and it's no coincidence that they're most ahead of the average for having played a branded game in the last month, with almost a fifth doing so. In fact, they're more likely to be playing branded games than clicking on social ads or reading branded blogs. And And of course, we're talking about Gen Z here, so this is more likely to be happening on their mobiles within branded apps or social media apps. And the choice in app types they use shines more light here. Games apps, entertainment apps, and music apps rank in their top 3 over indexes compared to the average. Also, although the overall percentages remain fairly low, it's definitely worth mentioning that among this list are VR and AR apps. So there's definitely some basis for the hype around this tech, even if it is still in the early stages.
I saw that Snapchat and Nike partnered up recently. I think they had an exclusive campaign surrounding some new basketball shoes which used AR tech, ended up being quite successful.
Yeah, that was a great example, and it really encapsulated what we mean by experience marketing. And actually, I thought I'd bring up some more examples here of how branded marketing and entertainment are increasingly overlapping. And one of the most powerful of which, for me, is Apple's budget of around $1 billion dedicated to original entertainment content in 2018. We've already seen that Apple hasn't been shy about sinking its teeth into branded entertainment, having acquired Carpool Karaoke and Planet of the Apps shows. And seeing brands like Apple alongside those production companies who once ruled the content space unchallenged is definitely a sign of how entertainment and experiences are making their way to the heart of good marketing. But even for brands without such deep pockets or stellar brand images like Apple, entertainment has an important role to play. Recently, the gummy candy brand Trolley collaborated with Marvel's new film Deadpool. Now, staying true to the film's satirical comic theme, the campaign explicitly aims to provide an experience which distances itself from the traditional, predictable marketing of other campaigns. And I think what's really interesting about this case is that despite it being a fictional character, using Deadpool in their campaign is a form of influencer marketing, something which resonates well among the Gen Z audience. And that leads me nicely into which touchpoints most influence the Gen Z purchase journey. But let's start with brand discovery as the first phase of the purchase journey. It's here where we see how influencer marketing stands as an important touchpoint for Gen Zers. Along with vlogs, endorsements from celebrities or well-known individuals are the options where this generation is most ahead of the average. And if we look over to their attitudes, we see why influencer marketing can be effective. They're quite the personal and impressionable bunch. 4 in 10 say that they are easily swayed by other people's opinions, and in North America and Europe, Gen Zers are up to 50% more likely than the average internet user in each region to say this. They're also much further ahead for wanting to buy a product simply out of the experience of being part of the community built around it. And this is really poignant in Europe and North America. I think these attitudes are reflected in their affinity towards recommendations on social media as a brand discovery channel. So when marketing to this audience, it's really important to bear in mind the influence of those around them in shaping their opinion, and particularly how providing an experience underlines this.
So then, what about more conventional brand discovery channels? Do you think these still make much of an impact?
Well, search engines and TV ads still rank in their top 3 brand discovery channels, but that's behind online ads. So the more traditional marketing channels still carry a lot of weight, but the fact that online ads come out on top, whereas for most other generations it's search engines or TV ads which take the top spot, shows how it's digital channels which take precedence. Let's move on to the research phase of the journey. When Gen Zers are actively looking for more information about brands, products, or services, they're more likely to be turning to social media. Now, this really cannot be overstated. Gen Zers are the only generation to value social media above search engines as the best means of informing their purchasing decisions. They're also a lot more likely to be using microblogs, online pinboards, video sites, and vlogs for the same reason. And that really goes to show the potential for social commerce among this generation. And it also gives us a good idea of the growth potential of social commerce as this generation matures and takes up an ever larger share of online populations around the globe.
But when it comes to price consideration and trust, do you think that social networks give them the same kind of value that we presume they get from more traditional product research channels?
Well, to answer that, we only need to compare social networks with consumer reviews and price comparison sites for this behavior. So while consumer review sites and price comparison sites resonate most strongly among older generations, among Gen Zers, they're around 20 percentage points or more behind social networks. Gen Zers are also around 20 to 30% less likely than the average to use them to research products. And that really says something.
But what about actually purchasing via these social channels? They're clearly comfortable with trusting social media as a research channel, but do they trust it enough to actually make purchases directly through it online?
Well, only a majority seem to be okay with actually purchasing something on social media. This actually ranks as their least important purchase driver, something which is quite different to what we see in China, where social media is an important purchasing channel. And what this tells us is that this is the weak link in the chain within social commerce. Brands really need to close the loop at purchasing stage. We've already seen that social media has an important role to play in the brand discovery and product research side of things. And if we think back to earlier, to experience marketing, I think this is an area where experience marketing can add a tremendous amount of value if done correctly. For instance, the experience marketing example you mentioned earlier, Olivia, of Nike and Snapchat teaming up to sell the new basketball shoe range, this had to be bought in-app within Snapchat.
Yeah, I saw it sold out in just over 20 minutes on Snapchat.
That's right. So clearly, given the right encouragement, people are willing to cross that boundary and actually make a transaction on social media. There's something else I wanted to mention here, something which touches on the importance of branded entertainment among this generation, is how access to exclusive content or services is such an important purchase driver, mainly among Gen Zers in Europe and North America. Not only does this carry considerable weight in increasing their likelihood of making a purchase, but it also has a role to play in persuading them to become brand advocates. And this is quite a simple but effective example of how brands need to directly engage Gen Zers and encourage them to participate in the brand experience to activate this audience. That's also why we see that they're much more likely to say that the feeling of taking part or being involved would most motivate them to promote a brand. And it's also why we see that love for a brand is positioned in the top 3 brand advocacy motives, behind the more traditional high-quality product and financial rewards. Now, if we think back to the brand discovery and product research stages of the purchase journey, we know that a lot of this advocacy is happening on social media. To get some idea of just how important social media is to this always-on generation, Olivia is going to take you through their social media engagement habits.
Great, thanks, Chase. Yeah, so social media is an area of engagement that can really tell us a lot when we're trying to build a picture of exactly who Generation Z are. And while we used to think that millennials were the most social media obsessed generation, Generation Z have come along and completely taken this title to a whole new level. And I just want to briefly outline 3 marked differences that really set these youngest consumers apart from all other internet users. So the first is that despite our data showing that Generation Z are spending on average around 15 minutes longer on social media than millennials each day, they're actually choosing to spread this time over fewer social platforms. Now this could suggest that they're far choosier about platforms that they choose to share and consume their content on, despite the number of these types of platforms available to them growing significantly in the past decade. And if we look at what Gen Z are doing while on social, the story becomes even clearer. While millennial teenagers use social media to update their statuses and keep up to date with what their friends were up to, social media is far more of a time filler and content hub for Generation Z. What really stands out is that they want to be entertained in the social space, with almost 6 in 10 falling into our content networker segmentation, which includes those who use social to find entertaining content, to watch or follow sports events, and also those who choose to follow vloggers on social.
Well, this links back to the type of experience marketing I mentioned earlier. Social media is the ideal vehicle for brands to more directly engage customers through the type of content that captures their attention, beyond traditional advertising. So Red Bull's 7 million YouTube subscribers shows the power of this approach.
Yeah, exactly. And this want for entertainment is reflected in the named platforms that this generation is choosing to dedicate their daily time to as well. So YouTube attracts by far the biggest Gen Z contingent, and as a generation they're also more likely to be both Instagramming and Snapchatting, but less likely than millennials to be engaging with the older, more traditional social platforms that have been like Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, and I suppose from a marketing point of view, this type of engagement for entertainment really does need to be acknowledged, and also really needs to be thought through when brands are creating content for the intention of this group. Especially as we're in the age of ad-free video streaming, where branded interruptions aren't necessarily well tolerated, right?
Absolutely, and I think influencer marketing, as we've mentioned previously, is a really good example of this, and social media is really at the heart of this type of marketing. If entertaining, quickly consumed and unobtrusive content is key to communicating with this generation, then a social influencer sending out a product recommendation to followers would really suit well. And this preference for less direct marketing from brands is evident in our data, where we can see here that Gen Z prefer following actors and musicians over their favourite brands. And we also know that they're ahead of millennials for using social media to keep up with their favourite celebrities online too. But for millennials, the opposite is true. A more traditional and direct brand to consumer approach should be more effective when they sit ahead for following brands on social, and also for other social activities that we track, such as visiting brands' pages and sharing branded posts. So either way, it's clear that it's just not enough for brands to simply have a presence on social media, especially when targeting this hyper-connected generation. And as the consumers of the future, there's no doubt that their affinity for entertainment and online commerce will continue to shape not only social networks, but the digital environment more generally too.
Great, so thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions about the topics we covered today or anything at all, feel free to get in touch with us. And you can always find out more about Global Web Index from our website, that's globalwebindex.com, which has details of other products like our custom research offering and our GWIQ analytics solution. So thanks everyone, and goodbye.